I think this is better.
नमो विष्णुपदाय कृष्ण पृष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्ति वेदांत स्वामी इति नामिने नमस्ते सारस्वते देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्य देशतारिणे जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्तवृंद हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे वाञ्छाकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्यैव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः Jai. Hare Krishna. Thank you so much for joining in timely. Did everybody get a chance to read? Yes. Okay. Great. I think our team had already uploaded the PowerPoint, but let me share my screen and we'll review. I see some of you signed up for some of the verses, but feel free to, just stop and speak. Atmadarshini, did you sign up as well? No? You can try.
No, not yet.
Okay. All right. But you can definitely try. I see Sangini did and Shamuhini did as well. So we're on week 3 of reading Queen Kunti's prayers, and we've got one more week before we close Queen Kunti's prayers, and then we're going to have this whole thing where we're going to try to write a prayer to Krishna. And it can have elements of the mood, the style of Queen Kunti's prayers, or it could include your own. But something that inspired you from Queen Kunti's prayers, that's something that you want to take and maybe write it down. But towards the end of the semester, we should have something, we should develop our own personality of praying to Krishna. And let me start this PowerPoint. Oh. Okay. So we read till verse, actually, we didn't read the last 2-3 verses because of that mix up on the slides. But I remember Atmadarshini was saying that, oh, it's about Mother Yasoda. And yes, it was about Mother Yasoda. And she was talking. Now, Kunti Maharani is in this particular verse, she is comparing Krishna to the birth of Krishna, specifically to the sandalwood in the Malaya hills. So some may say that sandalwood actually comes from Malaya hills. Really? Does it? The Malaya hills becomes glorious because of the sandalwood. It's not the other way around. So when we say that Krishna was the son of Devaki, it's actually Devaki becomes glorious because of being the mother of Krishna. And that's the comparison that Kunti Maharani is giving in this particular verse. She's pointing out 3 points here that I kind of put in the notes. And the first thing is, of course, the Lord takes birth because of reasons. Sometimes even when we heard about Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's birth, when we heard about Krishna's birth, there's always an external reason and there's always an internal reason. And sometimes there's more than one external reason and more than one internal reason. But Queen Kunti here, she is talking about that, first of all, people say, some say, she's not saying that I say, but she say, I've heard some people say that the Lord appears to glorify pious kings right? How do you become glorified? You become glorified by your connection with a great personality. Why do people like to take selfies with celebrities? Why? Because they consider them great personalities, right? And why do people like to take pictures with famous gurus or, even film stars for that matter? Because they want to show a connection to someone. So, simply by having a connection to Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, these pious kings become glorified. We understand, we appreciate Arjuna. Why? Because of his dedication and because of how connected and how loved he was by Krishna. We understand even Draupadi. She actually even acquired the name of Krishna. Many people would call her Krishna, you know, feminine of Krishna, because of how much the way Krishna reciprocated with her love. So, one reason she says is that the pious kings become glorious and they shine even brighter when the Lord is there. It's also explained, especially when Arjuna was taking the queens of Dwarka under his care, and a simple cowherd boys could defeat him. He had the same Gandiva bow, he had the same strength and valor, but he was defeated by simple cowherd men who took Krishna's queens away. But no, at that point, Arjuna says that my strength was only because Krishna was present before me. And that's exactly what Kunti Maharani is explaining over here. And then she says that you appear out of affection for the king of Yadu. That's why you decided to be a Yaduvanshi, the king of Yadu. So it seems like you've entered the dynasty of Yadus, but actually the Yadu dynasty has become glorious because of your presence. So here she's touching upon this whole paradox of how someone that is a janma, unborn, yet is being born. And of course, we understand the beautiful pastime that Krishna appears within the heart of Vasudeva. Then from the heart of Vasudeva, he transfers to the heart of Devaki. And from the heart of Devaki, he enters the womb of Devaki. He doesn't go through seminal discharge. And how does the Lord appear? He appears in his four-handed form. And just imagine, she's saying all these beautiful prayers with the understanding that this is my relative. I am connected to this family, but I know that he's not born, he's unborn. So she's very fully cognizant of his position, but at the same time, she understands, she still has that maternal affection. That's how, Yogamaya works. Yogamaya, even Mother Yashoda, at moments she would have this realization of the opulence of Krishna, and then immediately it would be taken away. Beautiful pastime of when Krishna's telling Mother Yashoda that I was Nrsingadev. I killed Hiranyakashipu. I ripped apart his chest and I garlanded myself with the intestines of Hiranyakashipu. And he's graphically describing this to Mother Yashoda. And in a corner, a small little kitten meows. And immediately Krishna jumps up on his mother's lap. And Mother Yashoda said, "Oh, you killed? You were Narsimhadev?" So Yogamaya works in such a way. So at this moment, Kunti Maharani is having that realization of Krishna's opulence. But many a time she saw him only as her nephew, as someone that she cared for in maternal affection. And, you know, I was thinking that one thing to reflect on in this particular verse is how does the Lord's appearance at this moment, what do you feel more closely for you? That out of these two reasons, which of the reasons touches more close to your heart? Did he really come to glorify the kings, or did he come to give pleasure to the Yaduvanshis and his devotees? Um, and many a times, you while you're sometimes you're dealing with management and leadership, and you feel that yes, it's so important for the Lord to come to deal with, put everything in order, extremely crucial. But in the second moment, you can feel that, Prabhupada said he can send anyone to take care of the management aspect. But to give pleasure to the devotees, the Lord gets so much more pleasure. Because when he sees the devotees happy, he can take care of the whole creation and dissolution without having to even appear in the scene. He can do that remotely. But he comes truly to give pleasure to the Lord, to the devotees. The Lord comes to give pleasure to the devotees. And these are just certain things that I put down from one of Prabhupada's lectures on Queen Kunti's prayers. These are from my notes, and I think our wonderful devotee put it in the slides after the mishaps, but you could read through. Did somebody had signed up for 33? I'm sorry, I don't have that list. But just feel free to stop. Sangini, you had signed up for which verse? 34? Shama Mohini, you had signed up for some verse. Please stop me when it comes.
35.
35, okay. That's fine.
Line 36.
Okay, perfect. So now she's progressing. She's again talking about when she's reflecting on Krishna's birth. Of course, she's going to think about her brother. Yes? And what is she saying? Others say that since both Vasudev and Devaki prayed for you, you have taken birth as their son. Undoubtedly, you're unborn. Yet you take birth for the welfare and kill those who are envious. Now, very, very amazing that the word Sura has been used. Sura here means demigods. Now, not all demigods are always devotees, but they always side with the righteous people. Most of the time, demigods are righteous. So here it's quite significant when I was reading this, and I remember distinctly that I was thinking, why did Kunti Maharani not really think that envious of the devotees? They could have just said sadhus or bhaktas, or why did why did she specify sura, demigods? Anybody has any realizations on why you think she specified suras? Because here it was very, very significant. The birth of Krishna was being awaited for almost 7 children. Why? Because there had to be a change over of a term of management. Yes? Kansa had been tormenting saintly people. He was tormenting people in such a way that all the sacrifices were also stopped to the demigods. So actually, the people were forced to be envious of the demigods and not be grateful to them. How do we offer our gratitude to the demigods? By offering sacrifices. And that's what was stopped by Kamsa. So when she's referring to the birth of Krishna, she's thinking that, you prayed and that's why the Lord took birth, because he wanted to give you pleasure, but also to kill those who are envious of the demigods. Yes. So here, of course, it's not just by, she uses the word prayers, right? So just imagine the significance of prayers is already emphasized in her prayer. That it is due to the prayer of Vasudeva and Devaki that their very cherished desire was fulfilled. But is prayer alone enough? You also have to try to become qualified. Now, when I say qualified, doesn't mean that, we ourselves can really achieve any qualifications. But they did do severe austerities. Now, for them, the austerities could be thousands of years of tapasya. For us, austerity could simply mean chanting our 16 rounds, keeping our vows, trying to follow the regulative principles, trying to live a life of inspiration for others and for ourselves. When we carry the mark of tilak and wear Kunti, we're carrying the responsibility of entire Guru Varga on our shoulders. They're going to judge the movement, they're going to judge the sampradaya, they're going to judge our gurus by how we behave. Yes? So that could be our austerity. It's not that we all have to go into the jungles to do austerities. We can become qualified by these austerities to receive a boon from the Lord. Now, oftentimes devotees will, and I find this really significant because oftentimes devotees will have this feeling that, when we become devotees, we should be desireless. Here is a devotee. Here are Vasudeva and Devaki, and they have cherished desires. But what are they doing with their desires? They're expressing it to Krishna through prayers, and they're trying to become qualified for the Lord, to become those proper containers for Krishna to actually use them as instruments. They become proper refined tools for Krishna to use them as instruments. So, and of course, here she recognizes that the Lord's descent is always a response to love. It's not just because of their austerities. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, you think, when they said, oh, this is a very austere Brahmana, he only drinks milk. How did Chaitanya Mahaprabhu react? He said, you think just because he drinks milk, he's going to be allowed entrance and given darshan? No, it's not the austerities alone that can qualify us. It is first the prayers, and then because of the desire, Krishna will give us the intelligence of how we can become proper instruments and tools. So I think, the significance over here. Somebody wanted to say something? Okay. The significance over here is that they had requested, they didn't even say that Krishna, you become our son. They said, may we have a son like you. Yes. And Krishna's immediate response was, there's nobody else like me. So I have to be your son. It's a secret way of kind of getting what you want, right? But it worked. And so many times you can see the prayers that how, I don't know, I think maybe it was a little bit of diplomacy over there because they probably were aware there's nobody like Krishna. But they probably didn't want to order Krishna around. But at the same time, they expressed that we want someone like you, but there's no one like you. So you got to come. And, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur in his commentaries, he mentions that it was for 12,000 years of austerities. Just imagine how easy we have it. Imagine if we have to go 12,000 years of austerities. And in fact, I was reading in a purport on Brahma Samhita that simply by chanting the Gayatri mantra, the Gopal mantra that we get in our Gayatri, when we perfect the Gopal mantra in our Gayatri, we can get audience of Krishna in Goloka Vrindavan, simply by perfecting the Gayatri mantra that we have received. Of course, the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra is the transcendental vibration that carries us to that point. But that's our austerity, for this day and age, understanding that there's no way, leave alone, 12,000 years, even 12 minutes of standing on one feet is probably going to be impossible for many of us. I don't think I can even stand for a minute. But they have done those austerities, and our austerities change. And sometimes our austerities also change based on our own anarthas and how we need to be vigilant about what our austerities are. What austerities am I supposed to take? So there are some basic overlaying austerities that Srila Prabhupada has given us if we want to be called as ISKCON devotees. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur was saying 64 rounds. Prabhupada reduced it for us 16 rounds. That's our austerity. But even individually, we might need to be vigilant. We need to do internal check-ins of what our austerities are. Am I really offending devotees? Am I criticizing devotees? Is my austerity trying to be more tolerant? Is my austerity whatever it could be? We figure this out for ourselves, and we try to be austere in such ways that we can cleanse our hearts. That's our austerity. When we don't have to. Prabhupada was so emphatic about don't try to copy the sadhus. Try to follow in their footsteps. What does it really mean to follow in the footsteps? Find our austerities. Find what we need to work on to attract the mercy of the Lord. Yes? Does that make sense? I don't know if I'm... Now, in this particular verse, how many times the example of a boat comes up within, even when we talk about crossing the ocean of material existence, the Guru is taking us across through a boat. And it's so significant. I'm here in New York City. We're celebrating the 60th, anniversary of ISKCON. And it's so significant that Prabhupada traveled the world, so many times after by airplanes. There are maybe, some talks about it, but the glorious Jaladuta, travel is documented not only within the history, it probably will appear in Srimad Bhagavatam for some, future ages, that a saintly person came from, maybe 10,000 years down the line, somebody will be talking about Srila Prabhupada's contribution. But so significant that, Prabhupada, Krishna could have provided an airline ticket if he so desired. He could have provided an airline ticket, but he chose a Jaladuta. And I always think, whenever I look at this boat example, I'm thinking, it was significant that he actually came in a boat to deliver so many people, deliver the world in a way. And similarly, here it's saying that being overburdened, like she's using it in reference to that this boat is becoming overburdened. By what kind of people? The people here, bharena, by the burden, bhuri bharena, by people who are a burden on earth, are overburdened like a boat at the sea. And that Brahma, who is your son, prayed for you, and so you appear to diminish his trouble. So now she said, who prayed for you? Within her prayer, she's talking about prayers of Devaki and Vasudeva. Next verse, she's talking about Brahma's prayers. That Brahma also prayed for you. Now, do you see? So what's the problem when we pray? When we pray, and in our prayer, we include that, just like Kunti Maharani mentioned something like this, just like Prahlad Maharaj. And oftentimes I remember, like, I'm not ready to just live a very poverty-stricken life. I have too many desires. And I was thinking, oh my God, I need to get references from Dhruva Maharaj's prayers. Narad Muni was actually trying to convince him that, you don't need to, don't do it. You're only 5 years old. First, he tried. You're only 5 years old. Just go back home, play with your friends. What's the big deal? You didn't get to sit in your father's lap. Come on, just go back home. Like we say, children will forget in a few moments. But no, he was determined. He says, no, I'm not going to forget. Don't give me all these instructions. None of them are sitting in my head. You tell me how to achieve. I want a kingdom greater than my great grandfather. I want a kingdom. And he says, what are you going to do with the kingdom? Everything is temporary. Narad Muni is trying to talk him out of this. And he's saying, all these instructions are not sitting in my head. I want to achieve this. So, what does the true guru do? Connects him to Krishna. And similarly, we may have so many desires. Now, here, Brahma, who is your son, prayed for you. Why did he pray? He didn't say, okay, liberate me. I want to come back to Golok Vrindavan. Oh, to diminish my trouble here. Help me with my management responsibilities of creating the creation. Right? He also had problems that he was asking for solutions. So based on where we are at, and another very beautiful word, and I like how Kunti Maharani really refers to Brahma as Atma Bhuva. Atma Bhuva, Atma is self. Now, this person, she's giving reference that he's directly the Lord's son. Still, he's having problems. And he's relying on you to solve the problems. Yes? So he says, even he must turn to the Lord where the burden exceeds his own power. Yes? So the world becomes overloaded with demons, non-devotees, it becomes disturbed. Mother Earth feels the load. So at that time, Krishna comes. Now, like I mentioned, Kunti even says Brahma, the engineer of the universe. She's giving us the scale that, it's not just us. We're trying to manage a few little things and we think that, oh my God, it's such a big problem. But here Brahma, with all his 4 heads and all the knowledge of the Vedas, still gets bewildered, still gets confused, and still needs the Lord. So the helplessness exists even with Brahma. So if we become helpless, we shouldn't lose hope. This should make us hopeful that even Brahma, who has all the Vedas, completely cognizant knowledge, he becomes confused and overwhelmed. So what's the big deal if we become confused and overwhelmed? He found his way through prayer. We can find a way through prayer as well. And of course, I did put a couple, but I'm going to, this is the verse 35. Shama Mohini, you want to share your reflections on this particular verse? You're muted. Sorry.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, when I was, as I was reading, for prayer and the purport reminded me that the purification of the heart is nourished through of course hearing and studying. And the first thing that I thought about was Shastakam, because although it only contains that 8 instructions, 8 verses, but each one represents the lifetime of realization. And I find myself asking, do I really or truly appreciate the potency of the holy name, and do I truly 100% believe on that potency? do I chant with humility and tolerance and respect for others? And then Srila Prabhupada's emphasis on, during his purport, the emphasis on cooperation and surrender kind of reflects the same qualities. And so if he's emphasizing that, it's so important, for true spiritual progress. And of course, Krishna, I just love the way that Kunti Devi um, is saying that the Lord comes and kind of to rejuvenate devotional service, and
Yeah.
uh, and and He's available for all those suffering souls.
Hmm.
And I mean,
I think, yeah,
it's
that's a really
it's
beautiful
also
point.
yes, particularly her mentioning, that reminds me that despite of material attachment, the Lord continuously extends Himself, His causeless mercy, giving us opportunity after opportunity after opportunity to hear and chant, remember and hear, and ultimately, He makes Himself so available, Lord, with Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and give us everything. But then the real question becomes like, am I am I really ready?
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah. Well, I think in this particular verse, the biggest significant point that I got through was the Lord appears to give us so much subject matter to talk
mhm,
about Him.
yeah.
If He hadn't appeared, where would we, if the Brahma Vimohan Leela didn't happen, if the Damodar Leela didn't happen, if the Rasa Leela didn't happen, if these little pastimes of Krishna did not happen, how would we be able to nourish ourselves with the sweetness? If, if Krishna didn't speak the Bhagavad Gita, how would we get the foundation of truly that we're the body, we're not the body, we're the soul? If Krishna didn't show his Virat Rupa, how would we realize the opulence of Krishna's, the Adbhuta Aishwarya of Krishna? So it is only because of the Lord's appearance do we get a glimpse, and simply by hearing about these pastimes and remembering, it's like I always like to say, how do we feel like, especially with Instagram and all these places, we feel like we know these celebrities because we're constantly being bombarded about their lives, right? Oh, this one is pregnant now, this one is doing a new movie now, and this one is doing, and we feel like we know them. We're living their life along with them because we're hearing so much. The power of hearing. So simply by hearing how Krishna spent his days in Vrindavan, how he was born, hearing the prayers of Krishna, his different pastimes gives us so much subject matter to actually hear, remember, and worship.
Mm.
And what is that to do? Naturally purifies the conditional souls from the material pangs of the material nature. And here, of course, it says gains liberation, which in true sense is realizing that you're not this body, you're the spirit soul, and you're an eternal servant of Krishna. You don't have to really, irrespective of the body, if we realize the eternity of Krishna and that our eternal relationship with Krishna, we're liberated in one
Yeah.
way.
It's like Rukmini Devi, right? When I mean, she didn't fall in love with Krishna because she saw beautiful pictures or Instagram of
Exactly.
Krishna, but she was
Rukmini,
just by hearing, right? It was just like just
simply by
hearing. It was
hearing.
like, you are the only one who can help me, and it was fell in love to that. And therefore, Srila Prabhupada's emphasis, right? Just read my books, listening, hearing is so important. And
Yeah.
but in what mood are we really listening? And are we praying? And so this is what we're doing today is so important because we are seeing the views. We are kind of like diving into more in depth, really giving us an opportunity to introspect really what it is. We have to pay attention, but we have to pay attention to the intention as well. Is
Right.
this really to connect because I want to be better at giving class, giving it. Yes, that is going to be, will be the toppings. But the main thing is to be able to connect or to reconnect. It's just waiting for us to take the phone and call 108 Hare Krishna, right? Connect.
That is significant. I want to mention that, there was a young girl that reached out to me a few months back, and she said she has a really hard time reading. And I had actually reflected on this verse, and I put it in the discussion question here specifically, that out of what hearing, remembering, worshiping, what comes to you naturally? You know, if we're a little cognizant, like she's saying, I just cannot read. So I said, okay, if you cannot read, no problem, hear. But when you hear about a particular pastime, then you open the book just to double check if that person said, it's there in the book. And I was like, and it worked. And she started to develop taste. Every time she would hear something, she would try to open the book and try to find and read about it. And in that way, now she regularly tries to read. So sometimes you just need to cling on to what you're used to doing, what comes naturally to you, to be able to cultivate these very, very crucial, important limbs of bhakti, which is hearing, which is chanting. Similarly, like even with chanting, you can see what works for you. There was one devotee that said that, just chanting more than one round at a time it was very hard for me to chant even more than one round initially. I started to chant 16 rounds when I was maybe like 16. I used to put an alarm every hour. I would do one round an hour. When I started to do 5, 6, and then I started to do 2 rounds every hour. And the maximum I would do is 4 rounds every hour. Till then, I just said, you know what, let's just do 16. So sometimes it takes that effort, and we don't have to, it just doesn't happen. Sometimes you put in that conscious effort because you want to achieve something, you want that desired goal. If you want to develop taste in reading, it's not that one day you wake up and the taste is just going to happen. It could, if Krishna is really, but Krishna needs to see that you're putting that effort, and then Krishna will reveal, give you slight taste when you hear and you try to read and you see some details of the pastime, then you want to like read. It happened with me too. I heard, Damodar Leela, and then I heard somebody speak some details of the pastimes, and I went and opened a book and I saw more beautiful details, and then I wanted to read more in depth about it because of the sweetness of Krishna's pastimes. So we want to create that chain of our study and our swadhyay in Krishna consciousness. I just wanted to bring that up, and we need to really speed up because we're running short of time. But
The
Sangini, this
preparation,
is
right?
your verse.
This is
Yes,
the preparation.
yes, the preparation. Sangini, I think this is your verse, right?
Yes, Nidati. Thank you so much, Hare Krishna. Thank you so much, Manji. So this verse, I signed up for this verse, but I didn't know when I signed up. I'll just say a few reflections, what actually
Yes.
really stood out for me. And the main reason is actually where Kunti Maharani is saying, or take pleasure in others doing so. That actually so just like you both have spoke about the previous verse, Kunti Maharani is glorifying about the importance of hearing and chanting. Here, Kunti Maharani, through her prayers, is revealing the result of it, what will happen when we do that sincerely. So she's saying, "Oh Krishna, those who continuously hear." That is another word that really stood out for me is akikshna shaha. It really, abhikshnasaha, that really stood out for me. So it is continuously hearing and chanting or taking pleasure in others doing so. So I thought about, okay, what does that mean? Means that other personalities who actually do that. So, meaning the devotees of Krishna who do that. And that means glorifying them and their activities and their pastime, their devotional services. That that itself can take us back to the lotus feet. So that means glorifying the gurus, glorifying the acharyas, and glorifying the various personalities that we see in and here in Srimad Bhagavatam. That can take us to the lotus feet of the Lord and stop this repeated cycle of birth and death. And another thing is Srila Prabhupada in his purport says the importance of hearing from the right source. Is so that is, and Srila Prabhupada compares that with the poisonous snake, sometimes, or the poisoned milk. It could be like a poisoned milk if we don't hear from the right source. And while I was reading the purport and also reading this verse, Mataji, another thing that stood out is the realizations sometimes doesn't happen by, I mean, definitely doesn't happen by speculation. Realizations happen when we read and also hear the pastimes of Krishna and then connect back. Then, when we have an experience in our life, back to or read in Shastra, and then we that actually happens or happened to me several times, that when certain situation happens and I could get disturbed by those situations, then I look back to Bhagavad Gita and then I can connect that with, by the mercy of Krishna, to that particular verse or to that particular devotee's personality's pastime. Then I get some realization. Okay, this is why exactly this particular situation happened now, and that caused some disturbance in my life, and that is to crush. It could be crushing the ego, it could be crushing, then I connect with the Brahmas or Lord Indra's pastime. So it could be with one of those. So I see that beautifully, like here, Kunti Maharani and her prayers take us back to Bhagavad Gita also, where Krishna is saying that you do the devotional service and then I'll give you the knowledge and show you how you can get to me. And that's exactly what Kunti Maharani is saying. Just by hearing and chanting and remembering Krishna continuously, or glorifying the others who do this, we get the lotus feet of Lord Krishna. And that's just beautiful.
Beautiful, beautiful. It's amazing. I really like to listen to everyone's reflections. We should do this because when I looked at this verse and I was reading it, I actually read it from another perspective, and I'm going to tell you in a minute. So where over here, when Krishna says that, when Kunti Maharani is saying that, or take pleasure in others doing so, that stood out for me as well. But I was thinking more in lines what, I'd heard a definition of a leader. You know what is the definition of a leader? The definition of a leader is someone who wants you to be better than them. Okay. And it's not, the definition of a leader is not someone who wants title or a position or a role or of some sort of authority. No, the simple definition of a leader is that someone who wants you to be better than them. So over here, how significant Kunti Maharani is actually mentioning that, oh Krishna, those who continuously hear, chant, repeat your transcendental pastimes, that's great, phenomenal. But take pleasure in others doing so. When you're seeing others progressing in Krishna consciousness, when you're seeing others getting the mercy of Guru and Krishna, when you're seeing others advancing in Krishna consciousness, does that really bring joy to your heart? That's also a test for us. That are we really progressing? And what does that do? that when we start taking pleasure in others also doing, cheering, chanting, repeating your transcendental qualities, and the Lord being pleased by all of that, we certainly will see your lotus feet. And we will become. So, actually, in this particular verse, not only is it saying the importance of all of this, but it's also saying that this is the way you can get liberated from this repetition of birth and death, because we're in the repetition of birth and death because of our anarthas. And our anarthas is envy, pride, greed, lust, anger. And the way to really become rid of all of that is truly to understand that you're only nimitta matra, just an instrument. And you become happy seeing other people's progress. That's so humbling, you know. In one way, it's so humbling. It actually can take us away from this repetition of birth and death. So I was thinking in those lines, and the perspective that you brought, that we just by glorifying our gurus in connection to that is, another perspective, another angle of the same verse, which is so beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you, Madhji, for adding that. Actually, when I read first, before I started thinking over that, the first thing that came to my mind is you and Prabhu, how you always do. You did even this prayer class, right? Encouraging all of us to study the prayer. That came to my mind when I read, like, taking pleasure in others doing so, meaning that you're taking pleasure in others. Another thing that immediately came to my mind is how Sushimataji is hosting the chanting calls, right? So she's encouraging others to chant along with her. So many others are doing so many devotional services, engaging others and motivating others to do more and more in the devotional setting. And all that was like, it's so beautiful, Mataji. So it
It
kind of
is.
connected.
Well, thank you for your encouraging words. It's easy to do this when you are when how should I put it? It's like it's easy to encourage people till they reach a particular stage. We're very compassionate to new people. They reach a particular stage, and then you start feeling that they're like your competitors.
Mm.
And then, if you're cultivating a devotee, this is anarthas. These are anarthas within our hearts, and they exist. And we don't have a safe space for devotees to actually express this, which I hope this community becomes. Because unless we talk about it, we don't know what to clean out. Unless I tell you there's garbage under the sink, how are you going to clean the garbage under the sink? And how do you understand? It's we don't have to put a show. We're not here to put a show. There's no time to put a show. We need to liberate ourselves from these anarthas. So it's very easy, for me to say, okay, yeah, let's do this. Now, if you certainly, some devotees start to you start seeing them as competitors, or and then what to speak of somebody that you're cultivating becomes better than you, becomes more learned than you, becomes more eloquent than you. What happens to your ego? That's the time that, do you really take pleasure in others
Right.
doing so? And if you do, then being in the presence of lotus feet of Krishna becomes your rightful claim. Then we can say, yes, it's easy to be compassionate to someone that's beginning their Krishna consciousness. But are you really able to see that someone is so much, even after years, somebody that you cultivated is doing so much more better than you? And you take pleasure in that. That's the purport of this verse. And it's not an easy thing to do. It's not an easy thing to do. And because if you do that, what do you get? The lotus feet of Krishna. That's not something easy. It shouldn't be an easy goal anyway. It's not an easy goal. So it's not going to be an easy way to reach there as well. So we have to make sure that if those feelings creep in, we separate ourselves from those feelings. That doesn't define us. Those are anarthas that are coming in our heart.
Mhm.
And we should recognize them. We should try to overcome them in practical ways and forms. And if we're not able to overcome them in practical ways and forms, then we beg and we pray to the Lord to give us the strength to overcome them. And we try to put effort. That's the whole chain. That's why prayers is important. Simply memorizing a verse
Yeah.
is one thing. Of course, it has its sound vibration. But to take that verse deep within our heart and transform our lives is what these prayers are for. All right, sorry, we're going to keep going. But I'm going to skip over here and maybe we can read this and add to your notes. I'm trying to see if yeah. So Kunti Maharani over here is describing simple, the universal method. Hear about Krishna, speak about him. And Prabhupada said, sometimes Prabhupada gave it so simply, chant Hare Krishna and be happy. And there's so many asterisks underneath. Oh, you have to get free from, follow the regulative principles, chant 16 rounds. It's like an advertisement, but similarly, there's so many things to really achieve. So similarly, the layers of Krishna consciousness and going deeper within our own sadhana is so, so significant. And we should really, as a community, help each other. Give us that open space to talk about what we're having difficulty with and really try to overcome these difficulties because they don't define us. They're not really us. They're just artificial coverings or impurities on the true pure nature of the soul. So we look at the last two verses. I think we're only doing to 38 today, right? Yes. Yeah. Okay. So in this particular verse, "O my Lord, you have executed all duties yourself. Are you leaving us today? Though we are completely dependent on your mercy and have no one else to protect us. Now, when all kings are at enmity with us," now she's saying that it's like a plea of someone saying that, okay, I'm never protected. She went through, there's a whole battlefield of war happened to create a safe space for the Pandavas. They got their kingdom. Now, what enmity? What kings? He's the emperor. But she's still saying that now all these kings have become our enemies because we've killed so many people. We've acquired this kingdom, but we've killed so many people. Are you leaving us today? That personal aspect that comes out from this particular verse, though we are completely dependent on your mercy. Yes, she starts to count all of the reasons, all of the times when you had helped, the Lac House, when Bhima was poisoned, this, that, and the other. You were there for us. Now, are you going to leave us? Are you ready to leave today? And, Anuj Jivaha, Srila Prabhupada actually mentions, this really stood out for me. He calls the Pandavas most fortunate. Why? Because of their dependency on Krishna. Yes. It was not that they were less qualified than Duryodhana. Duryodhana was also very qualified. But it wasn't that they were trained in the same under the same guru. They were trained, they were all qualified. But their dependency on Krishna was actually what brought them great fortune. It was not a weakness. Their dependency on Krishna can never be a weakness. Sometimes we feel this whole, movement of even women liberation per se came about because women were exploited. When they decided to be dependents, they were exploited. Yes, to a certain extent, many women were exploited if they didn't have partners. So this whole thing that I don't want to be dependent on anyone comes because uh, you become susceptible to some kind of abuse or exploitation. It becomes a weakness if you're dependent on someone. So here, so significantly, when you're dependent on the right person, it's not a weakness. It was their great fortune. Their dependence here. So I was thinking in my perspective that, I don't like to be dependent on someone. I get frustrated if I'm dependent on someone because, it feels like I'm going to be. So I said, but, dependency is not a bad thing. But who you're being dependent on is significant. So here Prabhupada calls out Anujivaha. Why? You're most fortunate because you're dependent on Krishna, and that's not weakness. It's actually the cause of your great fortune. So that verse, this particular word really stood out for me. And I put this down because this is the question. And this is a question I ask myself quite significantly. That where am I resisting dependence on Krishna? Is it that I'm carrying my need to be independent within this world and the worldly relationships also not allowing me to be dependent on Krishna? So that's just a point for reflection. Now, in this last verse for today, um, she talks as the name and fame of a particular body is finished with the disappearance of the living spirit. Similarly, if you do not look upon us, all our fame and activities, along with the Pandavas and the Yadus, will end all at once. So she clearly is cognizant. In this particular verse, I felt that sometimes, Krishna, when we become sincere and we start to really contribute to the movement or something, or do some service, we receive appreciation. Sometimes we receive praise, sometimes we receive appreciation, and then we start thinking, I did this, And it's funny that I was one of the brahmacharis was just recently visiting, and I was reading this verse that day. And he was just visiting us, and he mentioned it, and I was talking to him that I said, I'm reading this verse. And he told me a beautiful pastime that happened. I was telling him that, it's so easy for us to feel that, okay, I'm the doer. Even though I know, intellectually I understand Krishna is the doer. I can quote the verse too. Ahankar vimudatma kartaham iti manyate. I can quote the verse. Intellectually I may understand. So he told me a very beautiful and sweet pastime. He said one of the devotees made this beautiful decoration for Govardhan Puja. One of the brahmacharis. He made this beautiful decoration for Govardhan Puja. And everybody was so appreciative of the decorations. And, many devotees were coming and telling him that, oh, what a beautiful decoration. And he's like, no, who am I to do? It's Krishna. Krishna gave the intelligence and Krishna gave the manpower, and, it was done. So over there, he was telling this. And then another brahmachari, I can take the name here, Gauranga Prabhu, he came. This was in Chapati temple. So Gauranga Prabhu came and he was just oblivious of who really did the decoration. He thought some other brahmachari other than this A brahmachari, he thought this B brahmachari did the decoration. So when Radhanath Maharaj came into the temple, and he was like, oh, what a beautiful, so beautiful. So Gauranga Prabhu immediately said, oh, this B brahmachari was, he did the decorations. He kind of was the main lead of the decorations. And this A Brahmachari, who was actually the one who did, was standing right there. And he said, I really wanted to say, no, Maharaj, it wasn't him, it was me. It was me. And can you imagine that scene? And I was thinking, and when I was telling him this verse, so over here, it is so easy to really understand, to intellectually understand that Krishna is what gives us all our fame and activities. If he takes away the potency from us, we may not even be able to lift our hand. One nerve in our hand or our leg, one nerve stops to function, we might lose the ability to do something. Just imagine. And we think we can do so many things. And that intense desire, when he was expressing that, I was laughing, but I was totally relating to it. That imagine how painful that must have been, and so much you wanted to really like be out there and say, no, Maharaj, it was me, I want you to know it was me. But do we really truly understand? So at that moment, if we are ever in that kind of a circumstance, we can understand that Krishna truly wanted me to know that he is the doer. And he can give credit for anything that I was able to perform, or he used me as an instrument, but he wanted to praise someone else. Krishna is showing us how he's present. We just have to be vigilant and open to seeing it. So such a significant verse to practice. So here she's saying our name, fame of this particular body will be finished with the disappearance. And it happened in the same pastime with Arjuna. He's renowned for holding that same Gandiva, which he was holding even when he was trying to protect the queens of Dwarka. But he was defeated and the queens were taken away. Similarly, you do not look upon us and all our fame and activities. So if Krishna is desiring to give someone else the fame, we truly understand that Krishna is allowing us to use, giving us the abilities, all the raw ingredients. We are only given an opportunity to purify ourselves. We should be grateful for that. So, and I don't know why, but I'm not able to move my slide. Oh, here it is. So no one should be proud of his prestige, power, and fame without being guided by the favor of the Supreme Lord. Always be cognizant of the fact that everything and every ability that we have at this moment can be taken away. Can be completely taken away. There's actually a very famous singer, I forget his name, I think his name is Narendra Chanchal. He was a very famous Bollywood singer or something, and he lost his voice completely. I believe he had cancer or something. He had lost his voice completely, but he was a great worshipper of Durga Devi. And he prayed, he regained his voice, and he decided that I will only sing bhajans connected to Durga Devi. There was some story, and I even reflected on that you totally realize that all the abilities you have and how you can use them to support the mission of Krishna, the reasons why Krishna appears on this planet. So with that, this is the first time that we've ended in kind of a timely manner. That's a big achievement. But I'm excited to wrap Queen Kunti's prayers up this weekend. But if possible, let's all of us write at least one point that really, really stood out. It's going to be very hard to choose one point. I can tell you that. But one point that you would like to include in your prayer to Krishna. I might not want to include that let the calamities come, vipda santu yat shashvat. No, I'm not sure if I want to do that. But I might want to do I might want to say that, let me realize this particular verse. Let me always be cognizant that, you know. So what is it that you would like to include in your prayer? Yeah? Are we ready to share that next week? Along with all of with that thought, anybody has any thoughts or reflections, please feel free to unmute and share. And my humble apologies. Yes, Madhuri Gopi, you don't have to raise your hand, just unmute and speak.
Hi Krishna Mataji. Thank you for the
Hare
wonderful class.
Krishna. I'm
So
trying
at
to.
I couldn't turn on my video.
That's okay.
No, the one point it really stuck from today's class is like the shloka where you are mentioning about the dependency of a conditioned living entity. That is so amazing. The reflection you shared. Yeah, it is a moment to moment surrender. Like, who are we really depending on? That is the right choice we make, whether we are going back home, back to Godhead, or we are trying to stay in this world. It depends on who we are actually depending on. That really stuck me because dependency means like it's a vague term. Okay, oh, once in a while, okay, while chanting dependency or while reading dependency. No, in every situation, who are we depending on? That really made a lot of sense and much more meaning to that verse. Thank you, Mataji. Thank you for sharing that.
Oh, thank you for sharing that realization. Thank you. Jai. Would you like to, would anybody else like to share anything?
A quick question, Mataji. When you meant next week a prayer, does it need to be in a poem manner, or it
No,
can be?
no, it can just be a point. I think by the end of the semester, we should at least have some sort of a knack of how to write a prayer. And then if we can include that into a daily practice, it's just our way of making these pages or these shlokas alive in our devotional practice. Because sometimes they're just in the book. Sometimes we may memorize them, but we need to take them deeper where we are actually able to connect them with our life. What does it really mean to me? I don't know. I have this tendency of saying, like, even if it's an acharya's appearance or disappearance, I like to think, what does that really mean for me? Like, I was born after Srila Prabhupada even disappeared from this planet. So every year on his disappearance and appearance day, I think his appearance day is similar to his disappearance day for me because when I was born, or he had left the planet. So I didn't really have any personal association with him. So what is it really, how is it significant to me in my life? Similarly, these prayers, they're speaking these words, but how does it relate to me in my life right now? What can I do to really move forward on my path? How are we going to really progress through the stages of bhakti if we're not going to start engaging all our senses, especially our mind, which is so powerful? Um, Krishna has put the condition of going back to him on smaranam, which is, he didn't say, if you attend 108 Sunday feasts, you can come, you'll be able to think of me at the time of death. No, it says smaranam. To cultivate smaranam, that mind needs to be so involved. So you have to learn to take every verse and very churn your mind in a way that it's forced to think about Krishna. And how you can do that is you throw tangents into your own life. You connect what this verse means to you at this moment, what it could mean for you, 5 years down the line. And it's amazing because if I did this, I studied this 2 years back. Every year I'll choose a particular part of Srimad Bhagavatam to read. Like this year, I'm doing all the Gitas. So last year, when I did all the prayers, I felt my realizations were something different to what I'm experiencing right now, or what I'm going through in my life right now. I feel that it's bringing out another layer of when I'm trying to connect it with my life right now. Right now, if my responsibilities in management has increased, I'm trying to see it from the perspective of a leader, of how I should not become overwhelmed with power position. But when I was not so much involved in management, I saw it from a different perspective. And so the same verse was relevant, but the principles, how I'm imbibing it into my life is, So I feel that maybe by this semester we should at least have a style. We've developed our own style. When you start picking out your favorites from all the different prayers that we do in semester one, you're going to have a package of your style, your most favorite, and then you can write a prayer after the semester. And then try to make that into a habit. Then we do semester two, we try to go dive deeper into the other prayers. And then so by the time we're done with 1.5 year of these 3 semesters, you're going to have 3 prayers. And every 6 months, you've had a habit of writing a prayer that's going to start becoming, your mind will start drawing into some sort of a prayer to Krishna. It's going to become natural over a period of time, you know. So that's the whole idea. But with that, we'll stop. We're already 11 minutes and 46 seconds over. Thank you so much for your time, and thank you so much for your association. I really, really value this time together. Hare Krishna. And I'm looking forward to hearing all your verses. I saw some recordings came in, but I'm looking forward to hearing the rest. Don't worry about it's not perfect. It doesn't matter. Nobody's judging you on your perfection. We're just can you give me 1 minute after everyone? Oh yeah, sure. You're telling me, right? Yes, okay. All right. Thank you so much. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Mataji.
Hare
Hare Krishna.
Krishna,
Hare
thank you,
Krishna, Sakhi.
Mataji. Hare
Hare
Krishna.
Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Mataji.
Hare Krishna.
Yeah.
Thank you.
There you go.
Sorry,
Let
just
us
one because I need
stop
to
the
release.
recording. Did we stop the recording?
Let me see. No, you're still recording. You can stop it.
Oh, did I not stop sharing my screen either?